Welcome to the Witchy Work Wishes podcast, a place to find your weekly inspiration for bringing your personal witchcraft practice into your business, work, and office. Welcome to Witchy Work Wishes, and to a topic that is new for me in our platform here. My theme today is all about fathers, protectors, and sacred masculine energy. Last month we sat together and explored the Maiden, Mother, and Crone energy, and some of the feminine archetypes that move through all of us in different seasons of life. And as Father's Day started approaching, I found myself thinking about the other side of that balance, about masculine energy, about fathers, protectors, providers, warriors, guides, and elders, about the energies that hold, defend, build, and steady us. It is about the sacred masculine archetypal energy and the witch father energy, the big solar external energy that is rising so strongly right now with our summer solstice coming up and our big Litha celebration. That Wheel of the Year topic is actually going to be next week. So today I wanted to really embrace the sun and the sacred masculine energies. But first, I do have a couple things happening in my little part of the world over here. I joined a fundraiser hike back on May 31st. I knew the big blue moon energy for me meant getting out and walking and doing something physical. So I signed up for an event called a Peace of Mind Walk. The annual fundraising walk was hosted by a winery that I'm a club member at, but it was launched back in 2020 to support community services for mental health, as well as, the research on the causes, treatment, and potential cures for anxiety and depression. Each year, participants gather at the base of this 628-acre estate to participate in the 10,000 steps, which roughly turns out to be about 4.5 miles. But it's a walk/hike across the hillside and vineyards. And over the last 5 years, the winery has raised over $955,000 for the two charities. One is called One Mind, and the other one is a mental wellness center. Now, after the walk was over, I came home, took a long shower, and started my workings for the Blue Moon water potion that I wanted to make. Well, I ended up making two. I know some of you are probably laughing right now because weren't we just talking about having too much moon water on hand? I don't know. I needed this one, though. This one I was really drawn to two actually very different energies. The first was a second chance energy of the blue moon. And the second one that I just kind of kept thinking about was a second spark type energy. I know those sound very similar, and honestly, I guess they are in some ways. Both potions started from the same base, though, the same moon water and the same ritual, the same, intention sitting with this rare blue moon energy. But then from there, the paths kind of began to separate, and each potion became its own thing. What made it even more special for me was that I worked with these over 3 different nights. I actually started on Saturday evening because, oh my gosh, the big, huge moon was like almost there, right? It was almost totally full, and my fire pit was absolutely calling my name. So I spent a good part of that day just outside, tending to the backyard and, once again, battling the ever-growing weed situation. But when I finished, I just didn't want to go back inside. I wanted to stay out there. So I started my blue moon workings on May 30th. Then came the big walk on the 31st and the collection of the moon water itself. And then finally on the evening of June 1st, on Monday night, I placed both potions back out under the moonlight overnight to seal the spells and complete the process. It was nice. It was really nice. Really nice to be that involved in a spell. I don't know that I've ever stretched one out over 3 full days before. Usually my spell work happens within a single ritual or evening, so it was different. It was fun. More like I was building a relationship with the energy instead of simply capturing a moment of it. It was new-ish, but in the best possible way. Honestly, oh my goodness. I have so much going on with my bookkeeping practice right now that it just feels like a big whirlwind, like a massive, massive whirlwind. I don't even know where to start. Let's see. Yeah, I do. I do know where to start. I know exactly where to begin. Back in March, we were working with the giraffe spirit energy. Remember? The energy of seeing farther, looking beyond what is right in front of us, trusting the bigger picture. I think I mentioned that I took my staff over to the zoo and we actually worked through the giraffe worksheets and journal prompts together. Now, every month when you and I do these animal spirit workings, I'm not just creating, content for our community. Like I'm actually doing it. I'm doing the work too, right beside you. But this was different. I invited my employees into the process as well. One of the things that kept coming back was this question of what I wanted the next 10 years of my bookkeeping and payroll practice to look like. And not just for me, but for the people who work alongside me every day. What kind of company do I want to build? What kind of culture do I want to create? And mind you, I am turning 18 years old. My company is turning 18 years old this year. So it's not like a brand new version. It's just the next 10 years version. What opportunities do I want to make possible for me and for the people around me? I remember having this feeling that something big was coming, like I just, to my core, felt it. I couldn't explain it. I didn't know what it was. It just felt like I needed to start preparing for the next chapter before I could actually see it. Well, apparently, Giraffe Spirit knew something that I didn't, because that next chapter has arrived. Now, the details are still being worked out, and nothing is completely finalized yet. But the short version is that a CPA firm in my area that offers both tax prep and bookkeeping services is beginning the process of transitioning their bookkeeping department into my firm. Not the tax side, not the CPA tax prep side, the bookkeeping and payroll side, which means I will potentially be welcoming not only a whole new group of bookkeeping and payroll clients, I will also be welcoming the employees who have been serving those clients. Oh my goodness. Needless to say, this is exciting. It's a little overwhelming. It is a very real reminder that sometimes the work we are doing today is actually preparing us for opportunities that we cannot see yet. And as this whirlwind continues, I am working long, long hours of taking care of everything. It is exciting and exhausting at the very same time. But the buzz is already in the air. And of course, some of this has leaked out to the valley that I am in. So I know the businesses are already talking. I have this huge, huge smile on my face. Might be a tired smile, but it is a really, really big one. I have never been a part of a merger before, so this is very, very exciting. See, in the middle of all of that business excitement, my house has been completely torn apart. I finally hired a painter to repaint half of the house. One side was ready to go, and the other side will be scheduled next. I'll tell you though, I did actually try to do this myself. I was very optimistic. I went to the store. I bought paint and a roller, watched a couple videos, and decided to start with the smallest room in the house, a bathroom. I don't think I made it 4 minutes into that project before I realized something very important. I do not enjoy painting. Not at all. It is not my gift. It is not my calling. It is not my path. So a professional was hired. And watching someone who truly knows what they are doing has been amazing. He spent the entire week working incredibly hard. Every wall is two-toned. It's got like that halfway point with wood that breaks up the bottom half of the wall with the top, which meant endless taping, careful edging, multiple coats, and I don't know, just so much attention to detail. The end result is exactly what I was hoping for. It is beautiful, but getting there has been a bit of an adventure. The master bedroom had to be emptied, which meant temporarily moving into one of the boys' old rooms. Furniture from the living room was stacked in the middle of the room. Bedroom furniture was piled everywhere. My giant walk-in closet, which is its own room entirely. Technically, it's another bedroom, but I've claimed it as my closet. It had to be emptied and shifted around too. Everything came off the walls. Everything got moved. And then everything had to be put back together again. Of course, this all happened while I was still working 11-hour days, so oh my gosh. If I seem a little scattered right now or tired, if my voice sounds tired, that's probably why. If I'm being completely honest, I can already feel a crash is coming. And not in a bad way, just in that very human way that happens when you've been running on excitement and adrenaline and deadlines and momentum for weeks at a time. Eventually, the bill comes due. The body just asks for rest, and the mind asks for quiet. The soul, my soul right now is asking for stillness. Maybe that's a part of why this upcoming waning moon and dark moon feel so important. After all of this expansion and growth and building and planning and lifting and organizing and dreaming, perhaps the next phase is simply allowing myself to exhale, to kind of regroup and rest. I know I talk about it enough here on this podcast. We need to trust that not every season is meant for constant movement. Sometimes the most productive thing we can do is pause just long enough to appreciate how far we've actually come. And the see through it all, I just keep coming back to gratitude, really. I have so much to be thankful for right now. Not because everything is easy, definitely is not easy right now, or that I don't have a bunch of challenges, not because there isn't stress, uncertainty, exhaustion, or moments where I'm wondering how I'm going to fit one more thing into an already full day, but because when I step back and really look at my life, I can see how much goodness is here. I can see the opportunities and the people. I can see the growth. I see the things I once hoped for that are now simply part of my everyday life. And yes, I know I've worked hard for them. Oh, we talk about this all the time in our community, don't we? The spells matter, the rituals and intentions and manifestations matter, but none of those things replace the work. They guide us, they help us towards the path, but we still have to walk it, right? We still have to show up and take the risks. We have to do the work. And I have. I have worked hard for what I have built, and I will continue to work hard for the things that I am still building. But I also think there comes a point where we just have to stop for a moment and simply acknowledge what is here, to recognize, the blessings that have arrived and celebrate the progress that we have made. There is value in appreciating the life that exists right now instead of, just focusing on the next goal or the next project or whatever the next thing is that we are trying to create. So, despite the chaos, despite the paint cans and moving furniture, despite the long work days, the merger that is probably going to happen, and I don't know, the uncertainty of big business decisions and major transitions, I'm thankful. I am deeply, deeply thankful. So, I mentioned last week that I was trying to organize my thoughts around Father's Day and the 1 year anniversary of my father passing last June. And this idea of exploring solar energy and the masculine side of our spiritual lives, the more I sat with it, the more ironic it all became. Because the truth is, I have spent much of my life living in masculine energy. Interesting that I haven't talked about it really much on this podcast at all. Not necessarily because I wanted to live in all of that masculine energy, because I had to. Being a single mom, running a business, managing a household, making all of the decisions, paying all of the bills, taking care of all the responsibilities, holding everything together when there wasn't anyone else to do it. Those are, I think, all expressions of masculine energy in some shape or form. Structure, action, protection, leadership, responsibility. For a very, very long time, that side of the pendulum was where I lived. So it actually makes perfect sense that over the past 5 years, I've been so drawn towards the feminine, towards intuition and flow and creativity, healing, being receptive, having cycles, emotions, all of the things that witchcraft has helped me reconnect with. It's inviting and it's nourishing. And really, as a part of myself, I wanted to know better. Part of myself I wanted to bring back into balance. So, I don't know. With all of that said, you would think today's conversation would have come easily for me. You would think talking about masculine energy would feel natural, familiar, comfortable. After all, this is a world I know very, very well. I've lived it, I've relied on it, I've built an entire life with it. But it did not come easily. In fact, I struggled with this episode more than I expected to. And if I'm being honest, I'm sure my father has something to do with that. I'm sure grief has something to do with it. I'm sure the responsibility of raising two boys into healthy, kind, and capable young men has something to do with it too. Because when we start talking about masculine energy, we aren't just talking about concepts. We are talking about our fathers, our sons, ourselves, about strength and protection, and about some wounds and some healing. We're talking about the parts of ourselves that build, provide, defend, and lead. And sometimes those conversations are more complicated than they first appear. So, let's see. Instead of trying to have all of the answers today, I'm just going to start. I'm just going to begin. We're going to start the conversation, and I promise I will do my best to make it fluid enough that hopefully we all walk away with something. Maybe it's a new perspective. Maybe it's a question you want to sit with a little longer. Or, I don't know, maybe, like for me, it's a piece of your own story that suddenly just makes more sense. Today's conversation is a refreshed way of thinking about and working with the sun's energy and the masculine side of the spiritual path. Because just as the moon has wisdom to offer, so does the sun. Just as the feminine has lessons to teach us, so does the masculine. And, I don't know, a lot of really good magic isn't just found in choosing one over the other. I think it's more about learning how they work together side by side in each of us. So grab a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, or whatever your magical potion happens to be sitting with you right now. Settle in, get comfortable. Today is all about fathers, protectors, and sacred masculine energy. Father's Day is coming up, and the energy right now is very solar based. Very big, bright, hot sun type energy, masculine energy. The summer solstice celebrates this exact energy. And next week, we, of course, will have our Wheel of the Year celebration episode about Litha. But today, I would really like to talk about the witch father, the witch king, the amazing masculine energy that we all have and use, and some strong archetypes with it. Now, last June, I lost my father. I've been reflecting on what happened, why it happened, and how it has impacted me over the past 12 months. Grief is a strange little thing, a very personal process, for sure. Definitely does not move in straight lines. Really more like waves. And I know I've talked about this with you in the past. Sometimes it's just there in the background where life feels, mostly normal again. And sometimes it catches you completely off guard in the smallest moments with a memory or smell or something. A random Tuesday afternoon where suddenly your chest just feels heavy again. And somewhere inside all of that reflection, especially with Father's Day approaching here, I started thinking about masculine energy in a much deeper way than I ever have before. Not just fathers themselves, but the energy of protectors and providers, guides, builders, mentors, and steady hands. The people in our lives who hold structure, create safety, defend what they love, and quietly carry responsibility even when nobody notices. I also started thinking about how complicated those relationships can be for us as humans. Some people listening may have had incredible fathers. Some may have experienced absence, distance, loss, or pain. Some may have had grandfathers, uncles, stepfathers, friends, or mentors who stepped into those protective roles instead. And some of us are still trying to heal the parts of ourselves shaped by wounded masculine energy while also learning what healthy masculine energy actually looks like. I have had, and of course still have, the greatest gift of raising two boys. Any gift of motherhood is something to be cherished for sure. But raising two boys to be good young men looks very different than it did for our parents or our grandparents. The world they're growing up in moves differently now. I guess that's true for every generation. The conversations are different. The expectations are different. And I think, many of us with boys are trying to figure out how to raise strong men without teaching hardness. We are learning how to teach leadership without ego and how to have confidence without being cruel. Protection can happen without control, and we can have independence without emotional distance. Because healthy masculinity is not the absence of emotion. It's not domination or silence or, pretending nothing hurts. Real strength has depth to it. It has steadiness, accountability, compassion, boundaries, integrity. It knows when to stand firm and when to soften. It knows how to protect without needing to overpower. And watching my boys grow into young men has made me reflect even more deeply on masculine energy itself, on the type of men we hope to raise. the type of energy we hope they carry into their relationships, friendships, work, family, and community. Men who can lead with wisdom instead of fear. Men who know how to create safety for others emotionally, spiritually, and physically. Men who understand that kindness and strength can actually exist in the same place. And, maybe that's why part of this topic has just been poking at me lately. Because Father's Day isn't just about looking backward at the men who shaped us, it's about looking forward to the type of people we are helping to shape right now. So today is not just about fathers in the traditional sense. It's about the sacred masculine energy that exists throughout our lives and within ourselves. The energy that protects and stabilizes and builds and teaches and defends and guides. The energy that just reminds us how to stand strong without becoming hardened. And, of course, how to create safety, not only for others, but for ourselves too. Because I think a lot of us are trying to redefine what strength really means now, today. And I don't know, maybe that's part of this conversation too. When people hear masculine energy, I think many immediately tense up just a little bit, especially right now. We live in a world where conversations around masculinity can become very loud, very political, very defensive, or very painful very quickly. Today we are talking about archetypal energy, sacred and spiritual energy, the energetic qualities that exist within all human beings, regardless of gender, because every single one of us carries both feminine and masculine energies in different ways and in different seasons of our life. Feminine energy is often associated with, like intuition, creation, emotion, flow, and just being receptive. Masculine energy traditionally holds the energy of action, direction, structure, grounding, and protection. It creates containers, it stabilizes, it defends and builds foundations and helps us move ideas from dreams into reality. The more I've reflected on this over the past year, the more I think healthy masculine energy is deeply connected to steadiness. It is the energy that says, I will hold the lantern while we walk through the dark. Like, I will stand at the gate. I will help carry the weight. I will create safety here. Now, that energy can show up in fathers, mothers, friends, leaders, mentors, partners, business owners, protectors, and, of course, within ourselves during seasons where life requires us to become stronger and steadier and just more grounded. Because healthy masculine energy is not about domination, right? It's not about being emotionless. It's not about overpowering others or pretending that nothing hurts. Healthy masculine energy is very protective. It's emotionally safe. It's accountable and reliable. It has a calm strength to it. I think it knows how to create structure without suffocating people. It leads without needing to control and protects without needing fear. Some of the strongest masculine energy that I've ever witnessed in my life has been incredibly quiet. It is the person who stays steady during chaos. The father who gets up every day and keeps showing up for his family. The mentor who teaches with patience instead of ego. The person who protects peace instead of creating fear. The person who knows how to apologize, and the leader who makes others feel safe instead of small. But of course, like all archetypal energies, masculine energy also has a wounded side. And I think many of us have experienced that too. Wounded masculine energy does everything opposite of what I just said. It tries to control instead of protect. It shuts emotions down instead of communicating honestly. It becomes aggressive, rigid, dominating, or disconnected. Sometimes it hides behind ego. Sometimes it overworks itself into complete burnout because, I don't know, somewhere along the line, it learned that worth is only tied to productivity and performance. Society has changed a bunch, though, recently, hasn't it? I think a lot of people are exhausted from these old versions of masculinity. I think many of us are trying to redefine what strength actually means today, like now. Not weakness pretending to be strength. I'm not saying it's some mask, not cruelty pretending to be leadership either, but like real grounded strength, the kind that can hold responsibility and compassion in the exact same hand. Sacred masculine energy is not the absence of softness. I think it is the stability that allows softness to feel safe enough to exist. One of the reasons archetypes, I think as a whole, matter so much in our spiritual work is because they help us recognize energies within ourselves. When we look at energies that way, we stop seeing masculinity as one rigid definition, and I think instead start understanding that it just moves in seasons and stages, in expressions, just like everything else does in nature. Some seasons ask us to explore. Some ask us to fight for peace, and some ask us to build stability. So, I was going to walk through four masculine archetypes that I think many of us encounter throughout life in different ways, of course, not as boxes, but as energies we move through over and over and over again, just like we do with the feminine archetypes. The first one is youth, and it carries the energy of curiosity, adventure, possibility, and discovery. This is the, beginning stage, the spark. The part of us that wants to explore the world and ask questions and test boundaries and figure out who we are. I think this energy is deeply connected to springtime, of course, right? And to new beginnings, to those early stages of life and spirituality, business or personal growth where, everything just still feels wide open and full of potential. The youth or youthful archetype is the person standing at the edge of the forest thinking, what if? Like, what happens if I go farther? There's something beautiful and necessary about that energy. Without it, none of us would ever evolve. None of us would ever take chances. We would never start the business, begin the practice, fall in love, move cities, change careers, or step onto spiritual paths that completely transform us. This energy is restless, but in the best possible way. It's very curious, hopeful, and alive. But like all archetypes, it has a shadow side. Because without grounding, the youth can become reckless, impulsive, avoidant of responsibility, always chasing the next thing without learning how to stay rooted long enough to build something meaningful. I think modern culture almost traps people in permanent youth energy sometimes, right? Constant stimulation, constant reinvention, and searching without ever slowing down enough to develop depth and responsibility or stability. But healthy youth energy is incredibly important because it reminds us how to remain open, how to remain curious, how to keep discovering ourselves throughout life instead of, becoming emotionally stagnant. Okay, so next we have the warrior. Now, I think the warrior archetype is where things get pretty powerful. This is probably one of the more understood masculine energies we have, though, because I think when people hear the word warrior, they immediately think, violence or aggression or domination. But sacred warrior energy is not about destruction. I think it's about protection. I think the warrior defends what matters. This is the energy of courage and discipline, resilience, boundaries, and action. It's the archetype that steps forward when something needs to be protected. The person willing to hold the line, the person willing to face difficulty instead of running from it. And we all have moments in life where warrior energy becomes necessary. Sometimes it looks like standing up for yourself for the very first time, or, protecting your peace. Oh, maybe it's leaving an unhealthy environment. Sometimes it's surviving grief or advocating for your family, your business, your health, your future. The warrior says, this matters enough for me to fight for it. I think this archetype is deeply connected to sacred boundaries too. Learning that protecting your energy is not selfish and, understanding that peace sometimes requires strength. This is where I think a lot of our warrior deities like Tyr, who's with the Norse, he sacrificed his own hand for the greater good, or Thor, protecting the realms with strength and presence. Even gods like Mars originally carried agricultural and protective symbolism long before becoming associated purely with war. And this archetype shows up constantly in the business world, doesn't it? The warrior appears when we advocate for ourselves, hold boundaries with clients, protect our energy from burnout, lead under pressure, and literally continue showing up during difficult seasons. Of course, the warrior has a shadow side because wounded warrior energy can become anger, the emotional walls, hyperproductivity, and permanent fight mode. It can also forget how to rest, forget how to soften, forget that life is not meant to be survived like a battlefield every single day. I think many people are exhausted right now because they have been trapped in wounded warrior energy for just far too long. Next, we have the father, the king, the protector, the heart of this entire conversation today, really. It is the father and protector archetype. This energy is one that creates safety, stability, stewardship, guidance, leadership. It holds the center. This is the energy that builds the home, tends the fire, protects the people inside, and thinks, long term about legacy, responsibility, and care. A healthy protector energy has very little to do with power and everything to do with presence. It is a person who makes others feel safe, safe enough just to be able to exhale. And not just safe, but like emotionally safe, physically and spiritually safe. I think this archetype has been sitting heavily on my own heart lately between losing my father and, of course, raising my two boys who are becoming young men in a world that is desperately trying to redefine masculinity in healthier ways. We are asking, what kind of men are we raising? What kind of leaders do we need? What kind of masculinity actually creates healing instead of fear? I also think sacred masculine protector energy is deeply tied to stewardship, caring for what has been entrusted to you: family, community, land, business, relationships, wisdom, stability. And this is where figures like Pernunos becomes really fascinating to me. He represents a deeply earthy, wild, and grounded form of masculine energy connected to nature, cycles, protection, and abundance rather than domination. The antlers themselves almost feel symbolic of ancient wisdom and sacred responsibility. I also think about oak trees here, like strong roots, steady presence, protection during storms, and that kind of quiet strength we love. The shadow side of this archetype can become incredibly heavy too, because the father and protector often carries enormous responsibility in silence. Sometimes it turns into being really rigid, needing control and having emotional distance, feeling like vulnerability is weakness. But healthy protector energy understands that true strength does not require emotional disconnection. And finally, we arrive at the elder, the sage, one staying at the edge of the firelight after surviving long enough to finally understand perspective. This archetype feels slower and deeper. The elder energy is connected to wisdom and mentorship, storytelling, spiritual maturity, and ancestral guidance. It's the person who understands that not every battle needs to be fought, the one who has learned patience, reflection, timing. And I know this one is tough. I think modern society struggles deeply with elder energy because we are so obsessed with youth, speed, and productivity. But there is something sacred about people who have lived enough life to carry wisdom gently. The elder becomes the lantern bearer, the storyteller, the guide walking younger generations through the forest. This energy reminds me of wandering wise men, ancient forests, ravens perched quietly in winter trees, and old souls sitting around fires sharing stories that somehow feel older than memory itself. This is where archetypes like Odin become interesting spiritually because wisdom in mythology often comes through sacrifice, wandering, grief, and experience rather than control. And of course, the elder has a shadow side too. Without connection, wisdom can harden into bitterness, isolation, disconnection from community, a feeling of becoming unseen or, I don't know, maybe left behind. And maybe part of that sacred elder energy is remembering that wisdom is meant to be shared, passed down, offered, and spoken to the next generation so they don't have to walk completely blind through the dark. Well, as we move towards the summer solstice, we are also moving towards the height of solar energy itself. The longest day, the strongest sun, fire at its fullest expression. And honestly, there may be no better seasonal doorway into understanding sacred masculine energy than this point on the wheel of the year. Again, we have our big Litha and summer solstice episode next week, so I don't want to get too far into it yet. But this masculine energy is absolutely building right now for a reason. The summer solstice carries this ancient feeling of fullness and vitality, protection and responsibility. The crops are growing, the earth is alive, the fire festivals burn bright, and the sun stands at its peak strength before the wheel slowly begins turning back towards darkness again. And there's something incredibly symbolic about that. Ancient cultures understood that solar energy was not simply power for, like the sake of power. It was stewardship, the responsibility of tending life, protecting communities, and sustaining what had already been planted earlier in the year. And I think that ties beautifully into everything that we're talking about today with sacred masculine energy. The sun rises every single morning, whether we choose to notice it or not. It's reliable, consistent, steady. It's a dependable presence. And I don't know, maybe that's part of what healthy masculine energy was always meant to feel like. Not dominance, not force, but warmth and stability, protection. The kind of energy that helps life continue growing safely all around it. We can feel that solar fire starting to build this time of year, for sure. The days are longer, right? The air's changing. Everything feels more alive and visible and just outward facing. We naturally begin stepping into movement and action and leadership. We step into creation right now. The wheel itself is just pushing us towards embodiment, which is why this conversation around fathers and protectors and sacred masculine energy feels so beautifully timed right now. Like we're standing there, right there on the edge of the sun at its peak, right before the great fire festival of Litha, right before bonfires and the solar rituals and the celebration of life force itself fully arrives. Do you guys know the story of the Oak King and the Holly King? I'm pretty sure I've told it before at some point. It's one of those stories that feels worth revisiting this time of year. It's a story many modern witches and pagans work with around the wheel of the year. And depending on the tradition, I think the details have shifted a little over time, as old stories often do. But at its heart, it's a story about cycles, about balance, about light and dark taking turns holding the world. The Oak King rules the brighter half of the year. He is the energy of sunlight returning after winter. It's all about growth, expansion, vitality, fire, and action. It's all about creation with the Oak King. And he rises slowly after Yule as the days begin getting longer and the earth just kind of starts waking back up again. Spring arrives under his watch. Forests grow green, seeds become gardens, and dreams become movement. And when we reach the summer solstice, where we are right now, the Oak King stands at his height of power. Like the sun is the strongest. The earth overflows with life force energy. He is often imagined surrounded by oak trees, stags with, great antlers, golden sunlight through forest branches, and the warmth of sacred firelight. He represents this deeply protective, outward moving masculine energy. He's the builder, the guardian, and the one tending to the growing world. Now, standing opposite him is not an enemy in the way we usually think about enemies. Waiting quietly beyond the edge of summer is the Holly King. Now, the Holly King rules the darker half of the year. He carries the energy of winter, introspection, shadow work, wisdom, and rest. And as the days slowly begin shortening again after the summer solstice, his energy begins rising gradually, like, the first cool breeze that slips into that late summer evening right before autumn kind of fully arrives. The Holly King is associated with evergreen forests, lanterns glowing in the darkness, ravens on bare branches, and the wisdom that only comes, really, through surviving difficult seasons. He represents endurance, reflection, elder energy, the understanding that life cannot remain in constant growth forever. And every year, the wheel turns again. At Yule, the Oak King rises and the light returns. At Litha, the Holly King slowly begins reclaiming the darkness. Neither truly destroys the other, neither rules forever, because the old stories understood that both energies are sacred. We cannot live in endless expansion without burnout, and we cannot remain in darkness without eventually returning to the light. I think there is something incredibly healing about remembering that even masculine energy itself moves in seasons. Sometimes life asks us to step into Oak King energy, right? Build, protect, lead, create, and hold the fire steady. And then, sometimes, life asks us to step into Holly King energy, to grieve and rest and reflect and heal, to sit in the dark long enough to hear ourselves again. Sacred masculinity was never meant to remain frozen in one form. I think it was always meant to move, just like the wheel, like the forest, like the fire in the turning seasons themselves. And when you sit with these older seasonal myths together, the Oak King and the Holly King, the stags, the forests, the solar fires, and the wild places between worlds, we begin seeing how often sacred masculine energy was tied directly to nature itself. It's not separate from the earth, but really just rooted deeply within it. That makes me think of Carnunus again. I know I just mentioned him, but he really does carry a lot of the masculine energy that I personally feel drawn towards when working with these archetypes. The antlers, the wild earth energy, the protector energy, the balance between strength and gentleness, the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. He does not feel like a king sitting high above nature. He feels like, masculinity woven directly into the living world itself. Now, in Celtic mythology, Cernunnos is often associated with titles like the Horned God, the Antlered One, or maybe like the Guardian of the Forest. Images of him usually show him seated in stillness or some like meditation, surrounded by animals and woodland creatures. There is very little surviving written mythology about him, compared to like gods like Odin or Thor. I think much of what we know comes through ancient carvings and imagery and, later interpretations. But one of the more fascinating parts of his symbolism is the antlers themselves. For me, for me at least, I'm definitely drawn to them. Unlike permanent horns, antlers are cyclical. They are grown, shed, and regrown, which naturally connects him to seasonal cycles, masculine vitality, transformation, renewal, and just the rhythms of nature itself. I think that is a huge reason why he fits so beautifully into conversations around sacred masculine energy. He represents the masculine as a protector of the natural world rather than a ruler over it. And I don't know, maybe that's why these old masculine archetypes continue resurfacing in modern witchcraft spaces right now. So I think many of us are trying to rediscover what sacred masculine energy was originally meant to feel like before just the modern world distorted so much of it. I finished reading the book The Crooked Path by Keldon a couple weeks ago, and he talked a bunch about the witch mother and the witch father. I have not been able to stop thinking about it since. I think a lot of us, especially in modern witchcraft, have spent years talking about feminine energy, right? The goddesses, the maiden, the mother, the crone, moon energy, divine feminine healing, intuition, creation, emotional wisdom, and all of that absolutely matters. It is sacred, it is powerful, and it deserves every bit of the attention it has received. But somewhere I started realizing while reading his book that we do not always spend the same amount of time talking about the sacred masculine energy in healthy ways. And again, maybe that is because so many of us have complicated relationships with masculinity itself. Maybe part of what we are witnessing right now is the pendulum slowly trying to find balance again. Because the witch father archetype feels very different than the masculine energy many of us were raised around. The witch father feels grounded, steady, protective, wild in some ways, I guess, deeply rooted in responsibility, though, and devotion. He feels like the one tending the fire while everyone else sleeps, the one standing watch at the edge of the forest, the one who understands that strength is not proven through force, but rather through what you are willing to protect and nurture and sustain. That energy feels deeply connected to the summer solstice itself, just like fully illuminated, fully present, fully capable of sustaining life. I would love for modern witchcraft to reclaim this conversation somehow, some way, because sacred masculine energy is not separate from witchcraft. Never really was. It exists in the father who quietly keeps showing up every single day, even when he is exhausted. It exists in the man learning emotional vulnerability after generations of silence. It exists in the person setting healthy boundaries to protect their peace. It exists in structure, discipline, devotion, follow through, integrity, accountability. It exists in the willingness to hold steady during difficult times so others feel safe enough to rest. That's magic too. And I think some of us are probably healing our relationship with masculine energy through witchcraft, even without realizing it. We are learning that strength does not always have to look hard, right? Leadership does not always have to dominate. That protection can be spoken softly, that masculine energy can nurture. And maybe that's part of what the Witch Father really teaches us. Not that masculine energy must overpower the world, but that it can tend to the world, that it can protect the fire, that it can stand beside the Witch Mother instead of above her. And maybe, as the sun climbs higher right now, higher and higher towards the solstice, this is part of the lesson building underneath all of it for us right now. Not just learning how to embody sacred feminine energy, but learning how to redefine sacred masculine energy too. Sacred masculine energy has always existed within witchcraft traditions, folklore, mythology, and spiritual practices, even if we don't always call it by that name. When we think about witchcraft, many of us think moonlight, intuition, flow, dreaming, receiving, emotion, and creation. And those are beautifully sacred energies. But there is another side to this practice too. The side that protects the circle after it's cast, the side that guards the doorway, the side that tends the fire and keeps the lantern lit while everyone else rests. The balance of both archetypes, feminine and masculine, is something I value in my practice. Well, balance in general, I guess, not just in my witchcraft practice, but in life. As time marches on for me and I enter my crone years, balance has become more and more important to me. This is where solar magic comes into the conversation in such a beautiful way too, because while the moon energy often pulls us inward to reflection, intuition, and emotional depth, solar energy moves outwards. It illuminates, it strengthens, activates, protects. It rises every single day with consistency and purpose. And there's something incredibly sacred about that kind of reliability. I think that's part of why fire plays such a strong role in masculine spiritual symbolism across many cultures. Fire warms, protects, illuminates, transforms. It can destroy if mishandled. Yes, we know that. We work with that energy in some of our spells. But sacred fire is also what keeps communities alive through the darkness. It becomes the hearth and the torch, and then really the lantern carried through the woods. I think ritual discipline itself can be a form of sacred masculine energy too. Devotion through consistency, like, showing up for your practice, tending to your altar, refreshing your wards, lighting the candle again, and protecting your peace. Sacred masculine energy is holding your boundaries and returning to the work even when nobody is watching. There's something deeply protective and grounding about that energy, isn't there? And this is where witchcraft starts to feel very old world and ancestral to me. I think about guardians at thresholds, ancient protector spirits, figures standing at the gate or crossroads, making sure harmful energy does not pass through. I think about warding symbols carved into wood, iron nails above doorways, protective fires burning in hearths, men and women alike serving as guardians of the home, land, and community. I think sacred masculine energy is deeply tied to the archetype of the protector in our magical practices too. Not the ruler, the protector. This is where imagery like the antlers, the oak trees, wolves, ravens, mountains, and lanterns begin to feel incredibly symbolic. Oak trees, especially, carry this very grounded masculine earth energy to me. Deep roots, stability during storms, quiet endurance. It's the kind of strength that does not need to announce itself constantly. And then there are stags and antlers, associated with figures like Crononus. Antlers are fascinating spiritually because they are both protective and cyclical. They are grown, shed, and regrown again and again and again. Strength tied directly to nature's cycles instead of, separation from them. Even swords and shields carry interesting symbolism in witchcraft when viewed, spiritually rather than violently. A shield protects boundaries. A sword cuts energetic cords, clears pathways, and defends truth. They become symbols of discernment and protection rather than conquest. And one of the most important things I keep coming back to while reflecting on all of this is the idea that masculine energy often protects what feminine energy creates. The feminine, may birth the vision, the emotion, the intuition, the creative spark, but sacred masculine energy builds the walls that keep it safe enough to grow. Maybe that balance is part of what so many of us are searching for right now. Not one energy overpowering the other, but both existing together in harmony. Moonlight and firelight sitting beside each other in the same sacred space. All right, let's put our business hats on for a quick moment, because sacred masculine energy becomes really important when we start talking about work, leadership, businesses, and the lives that we are trying to build every single day. I think a lot of witches, especially creative witches, intuitive and deeply emotional people, naturally live heavily in feminine energy. We dream, we envision, we create, we flow, we feel. We intuitively sense possibilities before they even exist. Leading a balanced life can't be only living in this area. Eventually, something has to hold the vision once it's born. And that's where sacred masculine energy becomes incredibly important. Because structure is not the enemy of magic. Structure protects our magic. Schedules become sacred containers. Boundaries protect our energy. And financial planning creates safety. Consistency strengthens our practice. And then accountability keeps the vision alive long enough to actually become real. I'm pretty sure many of us have complicated relationships with structure, because wounded masculine energy often makes structure feel controlling instead of supportive, very rigid, almost punishing instead of protective. But healthy masculine energy in business feels completely different. It says, let me create a foundation strong enough to support your growth. Let me protect what we are building and help this survive long term. For me in my business journey over the past 40 years, one of the biggest lessons I've learned as both a witch and a business owner is that feminine energy may birth the vision, but masculine energy, man, it really does build the walls that protect it. The dream itself is not enough. We know this, not just in our business lives, but in our personal ones too. The inspiration itself is not enough. Eventually, the vision needs those systems and containers and boundaries and protection and, steady leadership with consistency and grounding. Magic that cannot sustain itself eventually burns out. And burnout is something I think many people are experiencing because they're just stuck in wounded versions of masculine energy without even knowing it. Maybe I should speak for myself. Maybe I should just speak for myself here. But tell me if this sounds like you too. Over functioning, overworking, constant productivity, never really resting, feeling like your worth is tied entirely to performance, and really living in that permanent warrior mode. That is not sacred masculinity. That is survival energy. Healthy masculine energy understands pacing and sustainability, stability. It knows that leadership is stewardship, not a path to self-destruction. I think this is especially important for business witches because there's often tension between softness and discipline. But we need both, don't we? We need both. It's not an either or situation. It's a and also situation. We need the flow and the structure. We need the dream and the plan. We need the vision and the calendar, the intuition and the follow through. Some of the most magical things we can do for ourselves in business are incredibly unglamorous. Paying attention to our finances, protecting our time, holding steady client boundaries, resting before burnout, creating sustainable systems, building long-term stability, showing up consistently for the things we love. That's sacred work, right? That's sacred work too. I think healthy masculine energy in business often looks like protected energy with steady progress. It's the oak and pine trees instead of the wildfire, strong enough to weather storms without destroying itself in the process. This conversation becomes deeply personal for many of us once we start talking about fathers, protectors, and masculine energy, because inevitably we start talking about wounds, grief, absence, expectations, forgiveness, the ways masculine energy shaped us for better or worse throughout our lives. Some of us carry beautiful memories of our fathers and grandfathers, our mentors and protectors who made us feel deeply safe and loved. And some of us carry grief and anger, distance, complicated histories, silence and loss, or, the ache of never fully receiving the kind of masculine support we needed in the first place. Many of us spend years trying to redefine strength because of what we witnessed growing up. Maybe we learned strength meant emotional shutdown, or, strength meant carrying everything silently. Maybe we learned leadership meant control, and that, masculinity was some type of hardness. But as a society, as humans, we are growing. We are learning and reshaping things. More and more people are beginning to realize that true strength has softness inside it too, with the ability to stay grounded, of course, without becoming cold. Emotional safety matters. Safe enough to cry, rest, and grow. Safe enough to become fully yourself without fear. That kind of protection, man, it changes people, doesn't it? Part of healing masculine energy, both within ourselves and within our families, involves learning how to create that safety for future generations, especially as parents. Because for me, raising two boys, right now in this world feels very different than it once did. I think many of us are trying to raise young men who understand that strength and kindness belong together, that accountability matters. Every time we redefine healthy masculinity, we heal something ancestral, right? We break cycles, we soften wounds, we create safer futures, and we teach strength differently. And maybe that healing doesn't always happen through giant dramatic moments. Maybe it happens softly in conversations and, some steady presence, in fathers hugging their sons, in mentors teaching patience instead of fear, in learning how to rest and listen. Really, though, in becoming emotionally safe people ourselves. Because no matter where we are in the journey, or right now, eventually we become the protectors. We become the steady ones, the lantern bearers, right? The people holding space for others during difficult seasons. The ones trying to build safer homes, safer workplaces, safer relationships, and safer communities. Really, the ones learning how to hold strength with an open heart. So as, Father's Day approaches, I think this episode is really maybe more of an invitation for all of us just to reflect a little more deeply on the masculine energy that has shaped our lives. The fathers, the protectors, the mentors, our ancestors, the wounded parts and the healed parts. The strength we inherited, the strength we are still learning how to redefine. The witch father really is a fascinating figure because, unlike the witch mother, he doesn't get nearly as much attention in modern witchcraft books. Yet when you start digging into folklore, traditional witchcraft and, the older magical traditions, you discover that masculine spiritual power has always been present alongside the feminine. In Keldon's book, The Crooked Path, the witch father is not simply the male version of the witch mother. Like, he really showcases him as a complementary force. The witch mother is often associated with birth, intuition, nourishment, the hearth, the cauldron, the mysteries of life emerging into form. The witch father tends to represent the wild places beyond the hearth, the forest, the hunt, the crossroads, the boundary between civilization and wilderness, and really the knowledge gained through direct experience. The witch father, of course, is naturally linked to older horned figures throughout European folklore, not necessarily a devil figure as later Christianity portrayed him, but as a spirit of nature, fertility, animals, the hunt, the untamed world. And I know I already talked about Carnunos, but we have figures like Herni, the hunter, and even aspects of Odin. Different cultures gave him different names, but many carried similar themes. What I find particularly interesting for our Father's Day episode here is that the witch father is not primarily like a ruler or a king, necessarily. Like, I think he is often portrayed more like a guide. Like, he teaches through experience and is the spirit that leads us into the dark forest and says, hey, go, go find out who you are. He represents wisdom earned rather than wisdom given. He's the energy of the mentor, the protector, the provider, the boundary keeper, and also sometimes the initiator who pushes us towards growth, whether we feel ready or not. That makes him a wonderful lens to look through when discussing healthy masculine energy, because healthy masculine energy is not domination, it's stewardship. For witches, specifically, the witch father can also represent our relationship with action. Many of us are very comfortable receiving messages, dreaming, journaling, planning, visualizing, and connecting with intuition. The witch father reminds us that eventually we have to leave the firelight and walk into the woods. We have to take action, make the call, submit the application, cast the spell. We have to become the person we are envisioning. I think that is very sacred masculine energy at work. Some people had wonderful fathers, some had difficult relationships, some experienced absence, grief, disappointment, or loss. In working with the witch father archetype, I don't think we need to actually evaluate our own fathers necessarily. Instead, I think we can ask, what does healthy masculine energy look like in my life? Who taught me courage? Who helped me stand on my own 2 feet? Maybe where do I need stronger boundaries, or what part of me needs to step forward and lead? Those questions, I think, make the witch father energy much more universal. Whether we are men or women, whether we've had great fathers or terrible fathers, we all carry both masculine and feminine energies within us. And perhaps, I don't know, maybe that's where the witch father becomes the most powerful, really, not as a deity to worship, but as an archetype that reminds us to be brave enough to walk into the woods, trust our own wisdom, and return with something valuable for ourselves and our community. When a woman, especially a single mother, caregiver, business owner, or I don't know, let's say someone carrying a tremendous amount of responsibility, has to live in what we might call masculine energy for a long period of time, it's often because that energy is needed. The bills have to be paid, the children have to be cared for, decisions have to be made, problems have to be solved. In that season of life, masculine energy can be incredibly empowering. It helps us create structure and protect what matters. It helps us endure difficult circumstances. It helps us just keep moving when stopping is not an option. The challenge usually is not the energy itself. The challenge is when survival becomes the default setting long after the immediate crisis has passed. Many women who have spent years in survival mode become extraordinarily capable. They learn to handle everything. They become planners, protectors, providers, fixers, organizers, and problem solvers. People begin to depend on them because they are so strong and reliable. But strength can sometimes become armor. Over time, a person may find it difficult to receive help, trust others, rest, play, create, or I don't know, just simply allow themselves to be supported. The nervous system becomes accustomed to scanning for the next problem. Relaxation can even feel uncomfortable because vigilance has become normal. Now, from a witchcraft perspective, it can feel like living permanently in the energy of the sword while rarely visiting the cauldron. Always doing and rarely receiving. Always producing, but rarely resting. always holding everyone else, but rarely being held themselves. That doesn't mean a woman has become too masculine. I think that language can be misleading. What often happens is that one set of energies becomes highly developed because life demanded it, while other parts of the self receive less attention. I think this is why many women eventually find themselves drawn back to things like gardening and moonwork and creativity, baths, tea rituals, journaling, cooking, crafting, or just sitting by the fire pit, spending time with animals, or simply just being in nature. These activities aren't inherently feminine because women do them. I just think they invite qualities that survival mode often suppresses. Being receptive, right? Intuition, softness, presence, and restoration. For a single mother, especially, there can also be grief involved. And not grief because she became so strong, grief because she had to, right? Like, there can be sadness over carrying burdens that just meant to be shared. Sadness over years spent managing everything. A little sadness over how little space there was for rest, dreaming, or being cared for. And yet there is also tremendous wisdom. There's also tremendous wisdom that emerges from that journey. Many women, sorry guys, many women who have lived through those seasons develop a profound relationship with both energies. They know how to protect and provide. They know how to nurture and create. They have walked both with the witch father and the witch mother energies. Some women spend years embodying the healthiest qualities of the witch father archetype: courage, protection, provision, leadership, resilience, and guidance. Not because they wanted to, but because someone had to. The invitation later in life, for me at least right now, is not to abandon those strengths. I'm proud of those strengths. It's to remember that they deserve access to the witch mother too. Not because we are weak, because hopefully at some point we are finally safe enough to set down the armor for a little while. I know this is all about the witch father, Father's Day and masculine energy, but hey, shout out to all of the single mothers, widows, caregivers, or women who have spent years carrying entire households on their shoulders. You've got this. I know it's a lot, but you can do it. For many single mothers, caregivers, and women who have spent years in survival mode, the masculine energy becomes so practiced that it feels like home. Planning, protecting, organizing, anticipating problems, managing finances, solving crises, getting things done. The witch father energy becomes the one standing watch at the gate, right? And guess what? That is exactly what is needed. But eventually there does come a moment when the gate is secure, the children are older, the business is stable, or I don't know, maybe the crisis has passed. Yet the guard is still standing there, exhausted, because no one ever told them they could come inside and sit by the fire. I think balance begins with recognizing that not every moment requires protection. Not every moment requires productivity or vigilance. Some moments require presence and creativity, rest and joy. The witch mother enters when we begin asking different questions. Instead of what needs to be done, we start asking, what do I need? Instead of how do I fix this, we ask, how do I nourish this? Instead of saying, how do I get through today? We ask, how do I want to experience today? Those are very different energies. Both the witch mother and the witch father are energies we all need to balance within ourselves. But I'll tell you, it's hard, especially if you have been hyper focused on one of those energies for a really long time. Again, neither version is more real than the other, right? They are both you. For a woman trying to move out of survival mode, the first step, I think, can be surprisingly small. It's not quitting a job or changing their life entirely. It's creating moments where nothing is being produced. And it does not feel good at first. I'm speaking to you from the core of cores, from my heart. It might be 5 minutes in the garden, a cup of tea or coffee with no agenda, watching the moon rise, petting the cat, sitting by the fire, listening to the birds, reading for pleasure, creating something that serves no purpose other than joy. Those little moments teach or help teach the nervous system that safety exists. And for someone who has done it all on her own for a really, really long time, those moments don't feel right. But once safety begins to return, the witch mother has room to speak again. The real goal isn't 50% masculine energy and 50% feminine energy. Life does not work that way. Some seasons require more structure. Some require more softness. The goal for me is choice. The woman in survival mode often feels like she has no choice, but just to remain vigilant. And for the most part, she's not wrong. That said, the balanced woman can call upon either archetype when needed. She can be fierce when circumstances require it. She can be soft when circumstances allow it. She can build the fence and sit in the garden. She can protect the hearth and enjoy the warmth of the fire. She can walk with the witch father through the forest and then come home to sit beside the witch mother at the cauldron. And maybe that is what healing looks like. Not choosing one over the other, but finally realizing that both have always belonged within her. For many years, I thought strength meant carrying everything myself. But true strength is knowing when to lay down the sword, come back to the hearth, and allow ourselves to be cared for too. Well, I'm not entirely sure how to wrap all of this up. I clearly, obviously, have some work to do on my end, some healing and exploring, some understanding. Uh, Maybe that's exactly why I wanted to have this conversation in the first place. I knew this was going to be a difficult episode for me. My thoughts have felt a little scattered around this topic from the very beginning. Masculine energy can be complicated. Fathers can be complicated just as much as mothers can be complicated. Our relationship with authority, protection, strength, and even ourselves is complicated. I don't know, maybe that's the point though, right? Maybe this wasn't meant to be an episode that gave us all the answers. Maybe it was just simply meant to open a door. I hope I was able to organize my thoughts enough that you walk away with something. I don't know, maybe it's a new perspective. Maybe it's a question you want to sit with. Maybe it's a deity, archetype, story, or energy you want to research further and, bring into your own practice in a way that feels authentic to you. What I really wanted to do today was just spend some time embracing the sun and the sacred masculine energy that is building all around us as we move towards the summer solstice. Not the, distorted versions of masculinity we sometimes see in the world, but the healthy expressions of it. And perhaps most importantly, I wanted to acknowledge that many of us have carried these energies ourselves at different points in our lives. Whether through fatherhood, motherhood, caregiving, leadership, business ownership, or simply surviving difficult seasons, we have all likely spent time walking with both the witch mother and the witch father. And as witches, I don't think we are meant to choose one over the other. We are meant to learn from both, to know when to hold the lantern and when to tend to the hearth, to know when to build the fence and when to plant the flowers, to know when to walk into the forest and when to come home. That's the real magic of balance. So as we move towards Father's Day and the summer solstice, I hope you are able to spend a little time reflecting on the healthy masculine energies in your own life, the people who guided you, the lessons that made you stronger, the parts of yourself that have learned courage, resilience, protection, and leadership. And if this episode raised more questions than answers, well, welcome to my world. No, just kidding. I don't know. Maybe that's exactly where the next part of the journey begins. Okay, I do have a poem and the moon update for us this week. I'm going to compose myself, get my stuff back together here. I'm going to grab those notes, and I will be right back. I've got the poem, and it goes. Both paths now live inside of me, by hearth and flame, by root and tree. The fire that guides, the hand that tends, the road that starts, the place that ends. The lantern bright upon the way, the gentle rest at close of day, the forest deep, the wild unknown, the sacred hearth I call my own. I walk with courage when I must, I pause when called to breathe and trust, for strength is not the sword alone, nor wisdom found in rest unknown. The sun above, the earth below, both teach me all I need to know, and as the wheel continues turning, I honor both, doing and learning. By hearth and forest, moon and sun, the many parts become the one. And so it is, beneath the sky, both of these paths now live inside. The hand that builds, the heart that heals, the wisdom that the spirit feels. I walk between them, brave and free, becoming all I'm meant to be. Let's see the moon update. Working with a waning moon and dark moon of June is going to be good for all of us. This is the exhale and the pause between chapters. The moment where we stop pushing quite so hard and allow ourselves to just catch up with everything we've been carrying, creating, and becoming. The flamingo spirit is helping us right now, too. This is our animal spirit for June, guiding us with its theme of embracing the in-between. It's about not rushing the process, about finding balance while one foot is still planted in what has been and the other is reaching towards what is next. That feels exactly where we are right now, doesn't it? We are not quite at the summer solstice. We are not quite at the height of the sun yet. We are standing at that threshold. The wheel is still turning, the energy is still building, but before we fully step into that bright solar season, we have this beautiful opportunity to rest. Sleep a little longer, put down the to-do list for a few hours, read the book and watch the movie. If you're a napper, take a nap. For me, drink the lemon water, sit outside with our coffee and listen to the birds. And remember that restoration is not laziness. Rest is not falling behind, and recovery is not weakness. So if you've been feeling tired, stretched thin, emotional, overwhelmed, or I don't know, just like you're running on full speed for weeks at a time, perhaps this is your permission slip. Take the weekend. The waning and dark moon are calling your name because Litha is coming. The sun is rising towards its peak, and when that summer bell finally rings, we will be ready to greet it. Now, next week's episode is all about Litha and our summer solstice, and I am super excited to be sharing this celebration with you. Thank you, though, for today. Thank you for sitting with me. I know this was not my best foot forward. I know it was scattered. So thank you for being on this journey with me. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week with a waning moon and a wonderful dark moon weekend. I will talk with you next week. Thank you for joining me today at Witchy Work Wishes, a place to find your weekly inspiration for bringing your personal witchcraft practice into your business, work, and office. For more information and additional content, please visit me online at witchyworkwishes.com. If you want to send me a personal note, please email me at info@witchyworkwishes.com. And of course, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for Witchy Work Wishes.